15 years before being elected, I was a street kid, 17 years old, in jail being tried as an adult. Judge gave me a second chance after 9 months behind bars. Came out 15 years later.
For 24 years, Judge Greg Mathis was the king of the second chance, the jail-to-judge icon. But his story of hope concealed a far darker jail story. When his show was suddenly canceled, the public was told it was corporate cutbacks. The real reason is buried in a shocking 911 call, one that threatens to expose his entire 24-year redemption story as a lie. Because the story of that 911 call isn't about one bad night. It's the final shattering end of a 2-decade cover-up. A story that begins not with his public rise, but with the flawless image he built. The rise of a Detroit legend. Before he wore the robe and held the gavel, before he was a symbol of hope for millions, Greg Mathis was just another number in a Detroit jail cell, facing a judge of his own. He was born in Detroit, Michigan, and raised in the Herman Gardens housing project, a world away from a courthouse. This was a high-crime neighborhood where the law wasn't a protector, it was an adversary. His father was separated from his mother, leaving her to raise him and his brothers alone. He was a smart kid, but in his world, street smarts mattered more than book smarts, and the streets in 1970s Detroit were run by gangs. By his early teens, Mathis had fallen in. He joined a notorious gang called the Errol Flynns. This wasn't a minor flirtation. This was a deep-seated criminal life. He was arrested multiple times for petty crimes, but the looming shadow of his environment was pulling him towards something far more serious. He was on a path to a felony conviction, a statistical certainty for so many kids in his neighborhood. Then, at 17, the ticking time bomb that was his life finally exploded. He was arrested, and this time, it was serious. He was charged with carrying a concealed weapon, a felony. This was the high-stakes moment that should have ended his story. He was a 17-year-old gang member with a gun charge. In the eyes of the law, his future was already written. A felony conviction, prison, and a life trapped in the system. He was sitting in a jail cell, staring at the exact future he had been groomed for. This is where the psychological root of his entire redemption story begins. While he was locked up, he received devastating news. His mother, the one person who had fought to keep him safe, had been diagnosed with colon cancer. It was a profound shock, a brutal wake-up call that shattered his tough guy facade. He realized that while he was busy destroying his own life, the person who gave him that life was fighting to keep hers. That moment in jail became his rock bottom, but then came the pivot. He was brought before a compassionate judge who saw something in the angry, terrified kid in front of him. The judge didn't see a lost cause. He saw a kid whose mother was dying. He made Mathis a deal, a 1 in a million shot at a different life. He offered him probation, on one condition. He had to get his GED. For Mathis, this was a lifeline. He took the deal. He got his GED. And when he got out, he was a different man. He was no longer a gang member. He was a son on a mission. He enrolled at Eastern Michigan University, driven by a desperate need to make his mother proud before he lost her. This is where his real ascent begins, and it was a brutal daily struggle. Imagine the culture shock. A kid from the projects, fresh out of jail, now walking the hallowed halls of a university. He was a man with two identities. By day, he was a student, but by night, he was a caretaker, watching his mother slowly fade. This forged an iron-hard discipline in him. He had no time for parties, no time for distractions. He had to succeed. He got his degree in public administration, but he wasn't done. He decided to aim for the one thing that seemed truly impossible. He wanted to be a lawyer. He, a former gang member with a criminal record, wanted to join the very system that had almost locked him away. He applied to law school at the University of Detroit Mercy. He was admitted, but the looming shadow of his past was always there. He was studying law while his old friends were serving time. He knew he had to be perfect. One slip-up, one connection to his old life, and this fragile new identity he had built would be shattered. He couldn't just be a good student, he had to be an exemplary one just to prove he belonged. He graduated with his law degree, passed the bar, and started his career. Not in a high-rise corporate firm, but in the trenches. He went to work for the city of Detroit, becoming a manager in the neighborhood city halls. He was on the other side, an administrator trying to help the same kind of people he used to be. But for Greg Mathis, that wasn't enough. He wanted the one job that represented the ultimate, almost unbelievable climax to his story. He wanted to be a judge. In 1995, he ran for a seat on Michigan's 36th District Court. This was the ultimate gamble. His opponents had the perfect weapon to use against him: his own life story. They attacked him relentlessly. They printed flyers with his old mugshot. They called him a thug, a criminal, and a gangbanger. They argued that a man who had been in a jail cell had no right to sit on the bench. They tried to use his past as a shocking secret to destroy him. But Mathis flipped the script. He didn't hide his jail story, he owned it. He turned his greatest weakness into his greatest strength. He argued that he was exactly the kind of person who should be a judge, because he was the only candidate who truly understood the lives of the people who would be standing in front of him. He knew their excuses, he knew their struggles, and he knew what it took to change. It was a brilliant move. The public, especially in Detroit, agreed with him. He won the election, becoming the youngest judge in Michigan's history. This incredible jail-to-judge narrative made him a local legend, and it didn't take long for Hollywood to notice. In 1999, he was approached by Warner Brothers. He wasn't just another judge. He had the perfect pre-packaged brand for daytime television. He was the living embodiment of the redemption his show would preach for 24 years. He had made it. He had conquered his past, built a perfect image, and become an icon of hope. But he had also just entered a world far more cutthroat than the Detroit streets he grew up on. The secret 911 call. At the absolute apex of his fame, with a flawless public image, a shocking 911 call would expose the jail story he really tried to hide. For 2 decades, Judge Mathis was the king of daytime. He won an Emmy. He got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He wasn't just a TV judge, he was a cultural icon, a symbol of hope, and a mentor to a generation. His 45-plus audience saw him as the pinnacle of redemption, living proof that you can leave the streets behind. He built an empire on his story of leaving the Errol Flynn's gang and that jail cell in his past. His entire public image was built on a foundation of calm, judicial wisdom. Then, in 2019, that foundation cracked. This is the hidden crisis, the real story. While he was preaching empathy and second chances on television, a 911 call from a city worker in Detroit painted a very different picture. According to the allegations, a city water department employee was on Mathis's street working on a truck. The truck was allegedly blocking the judge's driveway. This is where the sharp pivot from his public image becomes a violent shock. The city worker, a man named Tyrese Goolsby, claimed that Judge Mathis came storming out of his house, yelling and cussing. Goolsby alleged that the judge then escalated the situation in a terrifying way. He claimed Mathis ran into his home, came out with a gun, and said, "I will bust a cap." Let that sink in. The man whose entire brand was jail to judge was now being accused of threatening a city worker with a firearm, using the exact language of the street kid he claimed to have left behind 40 years prior. This was the double devastation. This was the crisis. It threatened to shatter his 24-year persona. This wasn't the redemption judge on TV. This was, allegedly, the original Errol Flynn gang member, a man responding to a blocked driveway with a deadly threat. The secrecy here is key. This was a scandal they did not want the public to see. This wasn't a business decision. This was a personal, violent scandal. Mathis's lawyers immediately went on the offensive, not just denying the claims, but threatening a countersuit for defamation. They alleged the worker tried to extort the judge. The message was clear: shut this story down. They knew this 911 call was a direct threat to the multi-million-dollar Judge Mathis brand. Why? Because it posed the one question his entire career was built to avoid. Was the redemption real? Or was Judge Mathis just a character he played on TV? For 24 years, he told litigants to rise above their past. He told them to control their temper, to walk away, to not let their old demons win. And now, he himself was being accused of doing the exact opposite, of pulling a gun over a parking spot. This was the hidden crisis he and his team had to bury. It was the jail story they really tried to hide. Not the one from his youth, but the one from his peak. It's shocking to see how a life built on redemption could hide a secret so volatile. Here on Retro Fame, we're dedicated to uncovering the true, often hidden stories of the figures you thought you knew. If you believe these stories need to be told, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another deep dive. Now, for Judge Mathis, this reveal was just the beginning. The fallout was even more dramatic. The 24-year lie crumbles. After the 2019 gun scandal tarnished his pristine image, the fallout was inevitable. But it came in a form no one, not even Mathis, saw coming. For a few years, the scandal seemed to be contained. His legal team had countersued, and the story had mostly faded from the headlines. On television, he was still the same wise, empathetic Judge Mathis. He had survived the crisis, or so he thought. But in Hollywood, scandals have a long shelf life. In February 2023, the news broke. Judge Mathis was canceled after 24 years. The public story, the one fed to the media, was that this was a simple business decision. Warner Brothers was cost-cutting, and daytime syndication was a dying model. This was the perfect cover story. But the real fallout was this. The 2019 gun incident had made Judge Mathis a toxic and expensive liability. The studio was now facing a difficult choice: re-sign their aging, expensive star, who also now had a credible, explosive allegation of violence against him, or just cut their losses. The cancellation wasn't just a business decision, it was a character decision. The studio had a morals clause to consider. The man they were paying millions to be a symbol of redemption was now a symbol of recidivism. He had allegedly returned to the jail mentality. He was canceled not just because he was expensive, but because his personal behavior had destroyed the very brand they were selling. This is the ultimate irony of his story. His entire career was launched by his jail story. And 24 years later, his career was ended by his jail story. But this is where the Mathis story takes its final shocking turn. Just days after the cancellation was announced, Mathis stunned the industry by announcing he already had a new show. He was moving to Allen Media Group to launch Mathis Court with Judge Mathis. This wasn't just a comeback. It was an act of reputation laundering. This was his true damage control. He couldn't let the cancellation be the end of his story. He couldn't let his legacy be fired for threatening a man with a gun. His new show was a desperate and brilliant act of survival. It was a way to seize back the narrative, to prove to the world, and to his loyal 50-plus audience, that the 2019 scandal was not the real him. It was a way to reestablish his character, the one he had spent 24 years building. The final detail exposes his true nature. The same hustle that got him out of that first jail cell is the exact same hustle he used to escape the cancellation jail cell. He proved he was a survivor, but this time, he wasn't just trying to save his life. He was trying to save his legacy. His complicated legacy. So, how do we remember the man who built an empire on a redemption story, only to be haunted by a second jail story he tried to hide? We've seen Greg Mathis's meteoric rise from a Detroit gang to a TV icon. We've uncovered the shocking 2019 gun allegation that shattered his perfect image. And we've seen how that scandal led to the fallout of his 2023 cancellation. His immediate comeback wasn't just a smart business move. It was an essential act of survival. His legacy is now a complicated one. Is he the man who saved himself, or the man who never truly escaped his past? He proved he was a brilliant survivor, but the question remains, was Judge Mathis the real man, or was he just the character he played on TV? But what do you think? Was the jail story from 2019 a momentary lapse, or did it expose the truth that was there all along? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We have a new video, just like this one, coming next Tuesday. If you love digging deeper than the headlines, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss another video. If you love this story, we've got more celebrity deep dives queued up for you. Just click the videos on your screen to continue. Thanks for watching.